Good evening. I'm Socrates Garrett, and we're broadcasting live from right here in Jackson, Mississippi, the heart of the Deep South, right here in the African-American-owned broadcasting studio. WeBelieveDigital.com, our own platform. And so it's critically important that in the African-American community, we control the narrative. I look forward to receiving opportunities to show and advertise your products for goods and services and to move your brand along in this community. We're broadcasting live on Facebook. On We Believe Digital Podcast, go to Roku and download our app, and We Believe Global, with shows like this to bring articulate, intelligent conversations and dialogue to our platform. So I'm here to continue sounding the alarm. This is how the South is going to rise again. Good evening, and welcome to Socrates Garrett Live. We're broadcasting live right here in Jackson, Mississippi, from the We Believe Digital Broadcast Studio. My guest is the Dr. Eldridge Henderson. I shouldn't call him a guest. He's been here long enough now. He's homesteading. He's permanent fixture on this show. So he's my co-host. And he and I are going to talk to you about some things that could really make a difference in the African-American community when it comes to trying to improve the quality of life. You know, we spent a lot of time going back and talking about where we came from and how things were back in the day. And I think it's absolutely necessary that we do some of that, and we continue to bring that to you on how things were in Mississippi in order that you might gauge how things are in Mississippi today. Now, we're broadcasting live. We're being seen in over 139 countries. You can find us on Facebook, on YouTube, on Roku TV, and our very own website, WeBelieveDigital.com. You can call in tonight and join the discussion at 800-492-5186. If you're watching us on Facebook, we want you to share this video presentation to all of your friends and families, and send us stars to encourage us to keep going with this most important work. If you're on YouTube, then go ahead and subscribe to We Believe Digital. If you're watching us on Roku TV, then you've already downloaded the app from the Apple Store, and our app sits right there between Showtime and Netflix. You would think we're one of the big boys with the kind of revenue that they have. Even though I understand that Netflix just lost 200,000 subscribers, and they're going to a lower price at $6.95 a month. But you got to listen at all of those commercials. So they want to make some money from advertising now and just not from subscribers. So the market continues to change every day. And if we in the African-American community don't learn how to change, how to make the adjustments like our forefathers and grandparents were able to do, if we're not able to do that today, then Dr. Henderson says that we're in deep, deep trouble. Dr. Henderson, it's good to see you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
I was talking about the fact that you think that we may be in deep, deep trouble. And for our viewers out there, tell us what you think the trouble will be.
Well, the trouble will be something that is very serious. And when I say serious, most people don't believe it, but we are in a position where we have caused ourselves a lot of self-harm, and I'm talking about black people. We won't take advantage of opportunity. We won't pool our resources. We don't love ourselves, our families, and we have no sense of community. We love our enemies too much, and we don't take advantage of good information when we hear it from others. And lastly, we have too much faith in prayer and no work.
Wow.
That has been the pillar of destruction for most people.
Now, Dr. Henderson, I believe you're a minister.
Yes, sir.
I think that I have some conflict with you being a minister and you saying that prayer has been part of the problem, which has hindered the advancement of the African American population. How can you do that?
Well, it's very clear. When you pray and don't do anything else, you're not going to get any blessings. It is always good to pray, seek, and knock for opportunities, not pray and sit down and wait for something to fall out of the sky. You can't find that in the Bible nowhere.
Well, I agree with you. I think I remember reading in the Bible that it says, you know, that the laborers, the harvest is plentiful, but the laborers are few.
That's right.
And Jesus ran everybody out of the temple and said, somebody got to go to work.
That's right. All he wants you to do, he has everything you need. Right here in Mississippi, for instance. God wants you to ask, seek, and knock. And opportunities will be plentiful. One wouldn't be able to take advantage of the things that would happen to them that's positive right here in the state of Mississippi, if they would just do those three things.
In the poorest state in the nation, where 40% of the population is African American, the 2nd congressional district is probably the poorest congressional district in the world. The African American population in Jackson, Mississippi, 30% of them live below the poverty level. But you say that opportunities could be had in Mississippi?
That's right. Now, this is nothing new. There was a man, I believe he was from Alabama or somewhere. His name was A.C. Gaston.
I know the name well.
He says that's what the opportunities are with poor folks. He says if poor folks have some money, they're going to spend it all. So you got to be able to get with the poor people and help them separate themselves from their money, and then you make the money off them and save it and invest it and then help them change their lives because they won't do it for themselves.
And so poor people, you know, you want to be where poor people are because you can charge them more. I don't think they have more income to spend. I think they pay higher prices. I think their gas bill and their electric bill and their interest rates on their homes and cars are twice, in some cases, what Europeans may be paying. So is it Gaston's model said that you need to be around poor people because you can charge them more?
No. His model was you be around poor people because they don't have the investment mind to save and serve. They have the investment mind to spend so they can live for the next day. So he didn't take advantage of people. He sold them what they needed. For instance, when he was a poor boy working in the mines, he would go and find rocks and paint those rocks and sell them to old ladies and families for a nickel apiece so they can prop the door open, because they didn't have electricity. Then he found that he had a need to make additional money, and he would go around looking everywhere, looking for buttons, because a lot of black people couldn't afford to go and buy clothing that was ready-made. They need buttons. He would find them anywhere and get his friend to find buttons, and he would get those buttons and put them together, similar buttons, put them on a string, and go and sell 5 or 10 for 2 pennies to black women and families.
Is this the same Gaston that started the bank in Alabama?
Insurance company, real estate company. He had a college, training school for veterans. He was rich by the time he was 50, and he was a millionaire before he turned 60, and he died with several $1 million.
Now, was he an educated man, or was
No,
he
didn't
street
have,
smart?
He was street smart. He didn't have much education. He started working in the mines as a young man. And he found, working in the mines, that a lot of guys would bring their lunch to work. And they couldn't get their lunch at times because they were struck in the mines. They'd come out and only have 10 or 15 minutes for a break. And he had his people to be waiting out there with sandwiches that he made and sold them for 2, 3, and 4 cents a piece. And before he turned 22, he was out of the mines, started his own businesses.
His own catering service.
That's right.
Now, Dr. Henderson.
With nothing now, nothing.
I understand that there are self-made men that come from absolutely nothing and go on to do some remarkable things, as Dr. Gaston has done. Why is it that our children that come from the least opportunities seem to do better than some of those that come from the middle class?
Well, because the middle class people have been ruined by their parents. Most of the middle class young people have middle class parents. And those parents are some of the worst parents economically than the poor people that have children.
Explain.
Because the middle class person, and I used to think this way, I always wanted to give my children what I didn't have and give them excellent opportunity. Give them money, buy them a car, do all kind of things. That's what I wanted when I was a young man. And my kids didn't do as well as I did when I didn't have nothing for 25 years. Nothing but a body and a mind and no education and training.
Doctor, you have been quoted as saying that black folk are part of a permanent underclass.
That is a fact.
And that is a designation that we don't want. And how in the world would you say that we are permanent underclass? And is that phrasing it the way you?
That's exactly what I said.
And so, how in the world would you say to all of the black folk throughout this country, throughout this world, that they are now part of a permanent underclass?
Well, when I learned how to read well enough to halfway understand when I was about 19, I had to read something called the Declaration of Independence, the Constitution of the United States. I took a course one time in civics. I learned a little about the government. Then I finished high school and finally got a chance to read some stuff about the Supreme Court. Then I had an opportunity when I was in the military to read a lot because I didn't go to those night activities on base and in the community. I started reading about local, state, and federal institutions, government institutions. Every one of those documents, every one, showed in writing that black people were not included, they were excluded. Many times they were the other. They weren't even mentioned by name, so they were excluded. They couldn't vote. They couldn't own property. In some areas, Mr. Socrates, if they had a parade in town, black folks couldn't even stand on the same street. And if they were in a building, it was against the law for them to look out at a parade next to a white person out of the same window. That is systematic. Always been that way in America.
But haven't we made progress from the days of slavery until through the affirmative action and through the integration and through all of these things that were designed to move us from being a permanent member of the underclass to the middle class and above?
No, sir. We don't have a lot of black middle class people economically. They are middle class in appearance. Most of the so-called middle class people I know have the following problems. They are paying for their home if they're under 65 or under. They are paying a mortgage on 2 or 3 cars because if they have a decent job making $65,000 or $125,000 a year, they are usually putting their kids in private schools. So some of them are paying for 4 cars one for the husband, one for the wife, and one for the 2 kids that's 16 or older. Then they have credit card debt, student loan debt, and if this group of so-called fake middle-class black folks would have sickness in the family for 3 months, the family would fall apart if one couldn't work.
You call it fake black middle class.
That's right. See, when you own less than a poor person that knows he is poor, he doesn't own his home. That boy might own his car because he bought it for $400 and maintained it himself. He doesn't worry too much about mortgages. All he worries about is buying a lottery ticket, living until tomorrow. He enjoys his life. He's not going to take a lot of chance in going to school. He's not going to make an opportunity for himself or his family to learn anything new. His prayer is, Lord, just let me make it today.
Doc, I'm having difficulty with that, but I know it's true. I remember when I first started as a sales manager for Xerox Corporation, I would get off of work every day, and of course I had the finest golf clubs that money could buy, and I had to dress the part, and I drove the part, and I would drive over to Grove Park, and the brothers would be laying under the tree drinking wine. But when they saw me come up there, they wanted to know, what do you want to play for? How much you want to play for? And I would think that there's no way that they're going to be able to beat me. You know, I'm taking lessons, I'm studying the game.
That's right.
And I lost money every week. And they look forward to me showing up. And of course, my pride wouldn't let me stop coming. And all they wanted to do was lay under the tree, drink some wine, play a little golf, and catch a sucker like me every once in a while.
That fake middle-class person.
That fake middle-class person.
Because you were in debt, you were buying clothes you couldn't afford, you had a ride that was too expensive for your needs and your family at the time, and you say you had the most expensive golf clubs you can buy at that time, so you were a walking disaster. You were living in an illusion of inclusion where you were outcast by the very people you were working for. They were only using you because they were told you got to get a few blacks, and they got the smartest they could find and told you to go and find a few more blacks so they could get them messed up mentally, economically, and socially, because they weren't going to let you join the country club. And then those people got in debt, and that's where that group appeared from that I call that fake middle class. Started in the late 1960s to about 1985. After 85, the bottom fell out of the black people. The big companies started leaving the inner cities, on and on and on. And now we're worse off than we were in 1965. I mean, today. Worse off economically, socially, and politically. Even though blacks are in charge everywhere, where there's a great number of them politically, have no power, don't have the ability to negotiate and work in teams to find the resources that are available to run good governments, to run the church. Blacks in predominantly black areas control the education system. And Mr. Socrates, they're doing the same thing that the others were doing, but doing it worse. When I went to high school, I left high school with a little experience in carpentry. I know a little bit about making chairs and desks. I know something about a little about auto mechanics, because I would look in the shop and play around with that. But now, in the public school system, in most black-dominated areas, they don't have that. They might have one career development center or one high school which serve 10,000 students with 2 or 3 so-called vocational or technical programs. And when I came along in the 40s and 50s and early 60s, every high school at 2 or 3 vocations and trades. So you can leave high school and start your own business or work with somebody else and be a carpenter, a plumber, auto mechanics, or whatever you want to be.
And you could feed your family
Exactly
and send
right.
your kids to school.
Exactly
and you
right.
you could do the kinds of things that we call, a decent quality of life.
Exactly.
You could own land, and you could do all of those things coming out of your generation. Now, you were born on a plantation, I believe.
That's right. I was born in 1944, during the most racist period in the history of America, from 44 to 1955. That's when the people in charge had no liability. When they killed folks, hanged people, burned them, castrated them. They would have public lynching all over the South. Hundreds and thousands would show up.
For a public lynching.
That's right. They take pictures and enjoy it and send it to their relatives in New York cities and other cities and enjoy life as being dominant.
Doc, we're getting ready to go to a station break. You're watching Socrates Garrett Live with my co-host, Dr. Eldridge Henderson. We're broadcasting live all over the country, all over the world, on over 139 countries. You can follow us on Facebook, on YouTube, on Roku TV. You can call in at 800-492-5186. If you're watching us on Facebook, we want you to hit the share button with all your friends and family. I want you to send stars to support this program. It's tremendously and critically important, the work that we do. If you're on YouTube, go ahead and subscribe to this program. If you're watching us on Roku TV, then you've downloaded our app. And our app sits right there between Showtime and Netflix. And so we're trying to get the word out. What is the state of the African American today, and where did we come from? Now, after this break, we're going to talk about some things that we got to do to correct the things that Dr. Henderson has proclaimed. So stay tuned, and we'll be right back.
Let's read and learn together. Meet Mason. Written by Sherry Tate. Illustrated by David. Mason is a young, inspired learner. Walk with him as he uses his 5 senses to explore the world around him. Your young one can learn to identify shapes, numbers, letters, and more with Meet Mason. Available now on Amazon.com.
The Mississippi Link is an African-American female-owned newspaper with a trusted voice that is highly respected throughout the city, state, and nation. Our motto, keepers of the knowledge for people who speak the truth, since 1993. Link significantly influences the thoughts, attitudes, and buying decisions of its readers. Call us at 601-368-8481 for your advertising needs. If you would like to receive a newspaper in the mail each week, our annual subscription is only $52 per year. That is only $1 per week for you to stay informed regarding many stories that you can only get in the Mississippi Link. Sign up today at themississippilink.com and click on Home Delivery.
Welcome back to Socrates Garrett Live. We're broadcasting live right here from Jackson, Mississippi, in the heart of the deep, deep South. In Mississippi, where our history, we are ashamed of our history. Some of the things that Dr. Henderson and I have been talking about just decries and make you feel bad and ashamed. And yet, Dr. Henderson thinks that Mississippi is the best place for African Americans to be. And I just can't get to the logic in that statement, but we're going to explore it a bit with him, because Mississippi is the poorest state in the nation, with the fattest station in the nation. Infant mortality rates is the highest in the nation. Everything bad, we are at the top of. Everything good, we're at the bottom. We have more people incarcerated in Mississippi than they do in third world countries. You know, our prison population is the largest in the nation. And 85–90% of our prison populations are African Americans. And why would this learned man say that Mississippi is the best place for African Americans to be? And we're gonna dive into that a bit. Dr. Henderson.
Yes, sir.
You heard what I said about Mississippi.
I sure did.
And you know what I said is true.
I've been hearing you for several years.
And so you know that we are last in every major category.
That is exactly correct.
Why would you say that Mississippi is a land of opportunity for black folk?
Well, there's one thing I've learned. Where you have more problems, you have a chance for more solutions. If you have a lot of bad things going on, there's a lot of work for smart people to come in and provide corrective action strategies to eliminate those problems. So if you don't have any problems, it's nothing for you to do in your community. You have to go outside of your community, go to another state, go to another nation. But you right here in the lounge den in Mississippi, so you can beat that lounge if you come up with a plan, a privatized corrective action plan with an agenda, with a checklist and a timeline, and say, I'm going to do the following for myself first, my family second, and my community third, in the area that I control, with my own resources, with my own leaders, right here in Mississippi, this place to be.
The Europeans in Mississippi have been some of the most brutal people in the world when it comes to race relations, and our history decries that. We go back and we think of Emmett Till, and we think about the murder of Medgar Evers, and we think about the murder of Vernon Damon, and we think about the murder of the civil rights boys that were buried alive in the dam. When we think of Mississippi's history, it is the worst of all times. And so and black folk left here as fast as they could, the great migration during the Industrial Revolution. Black folk left here in droves. But you're saying that this is the place to be.
That's right. It's a place to be, because a lot of people don't understand that poor white folks left here in groves too. They were catching trains day and night, headed out of Mississippi, Alabama, and Georgia, going to Chicago, Philadelphia, other places to get jobs, especially prior to and during World War II. Those that didn't go into the military, they left by the thousands.
White folk left.
The poor whites, yes.
Poor whites.
That's right. Because
that's an interesting category, poor whites.
That's right. They were the ones that were castigated by the lower middle class and upper middle class whites. They never did like those poor white people. They never did, and still don't today. You don't find white middle class and upper class Europeans messing around with the poor white person. They don't want them to go to their colleges and universities. They want them to go to their vocational, technical, and vocational schools at the community colleges. That's what they want. They don't have them blue-collar jobs.
Well, if poor whites were fleeing at the same rate that blacks were fleeing, when will poor whites and blacks get together and make a stand together.
Well, that is not their interest to do that. First of all, a white man could be as poor as the richest white person in his mind as being rich. And this poor white man can be as poor as he can possibly be, but every night when he goes to bed, he wants to be white like his master, like the one that owned that store, the ones that own. He's always better than the black man, even though he might be poor. He might own less land, might not even own a car. During the early days, he might not even own a mule, because he was sharecropping too. But he was always higher than the black man in his mind.
The middle class black, the blacks that were learned, and the blacks that had shown some degree of expertise in starting businesses and raising family and building churches, the poor white man thought he was better than them?
Better than those. And then when the black man got to the point where he showed he was better, the middle class and upper whites then would put the poor white black on the black man who was trying to make it economically. Kill his cows, poison his ponds, burn his house down, break his family up, do all kinds of things to destroy that black man, take his land through hook and crook.
This is the black middle class,
that was trying to do something.
that were trying to do something.
That's right. Economically,
they
socially.
weren't bothering the blacks that weren't trying to do anything.
Well, they didn't have to worry about those, because they had those people locked down on the plantation. And those that called themselves not farmers, that lived in the towns, always had jobs making $2 and $3 a day. So they weren't worried about anything. They were locked in the ghettos. And in order to survive, they either had to work or steal. And many of them then were engaged in the black market activity in their community, gambling, prostituting, selling drugs, selling alcohol, doing all kinds of things just to survive. I knew a lot of those folks when I grew up in the 40s and 50s.
So we got this two groups. We got two groups in the white community, and we got two groups in the black community.
And they will never get together, never.
Neither one of those groups can ever get together with the other group?
Not in the history of mankind for the next 500 or 600 years, because they've been trained to hate each other politically, socially, religiously. Even the Bible teaches division among the people.
What do you mean by that?
It says basically that you're supposed to love your enemy. You're supposed to allow them to abuse you and forgive them and try to catch hell on earth in peace and harmony and die and go to heaven. That's what the Bible taught black folks and poor people. That was trained in their system, in their culture, by the black and the white ministers, because history shows that the black ministers were trained by white ministers. And when a black got to the point where he was a good black, the plantation owner then will allow him to go to various plantations to preach on weekends, because this man had an opportunity not to work too hard in the fields. He was a supervisor. He drove the buggy. He worked around the big house, in the barn, things like that. Or he was the local breeder for the plantation owner. That was the role of that dominant black man, which often was the preacher or the bully in the community.
We believe that religion was the one thing that allowed black folk to endure the treatment that they were receiving every day, with the scars on their back, with the beatings, with the whips, with all of the chopping off limbs and all of the things that were going on, that it was the faith, it was the religion, it was the belief that there was going to be a better day.
They were taught that, sir.
That kept them alive.
That's right.
Now it's kept them alive, and that's a good thing. So it can't be a good thing and a bad thing.
Well, it was not a good thing.
It was not a good thing.
Slavery would have ended, at least, we're just going to say we had slavery in America. I'll just say roughly 450 years. Slavery wouldn't exist 50 years if black people had rebelled when they had the opportunity, like a few did do in the early days. They were always outnumbering the white people on the plantation. But they didn't fight for themselves because the white man knew that if you give a black person an opportunity to think he is a human being and that he is as good as he is, he's going to believe that.
Now, hold up a second now. You're saying that slavery would have ended within 50 years if black folk wouldn't have been indoctrinated with this religion and other rewards.
That's
if
right.
they had rebelled and understood that they were being beaten down with no value and
That's
no
right.
future, and that death was as good as that life, that slavery would have ended.
Exactly right, because death is always better than slavery in the minds of people like me. Always better. And white folks know that too. That's why they trained the blacks and made him into what I call a new man. They changed their culture, their religion, their politics, their minds about self-identity, self-control. They told them that they were not independent people. They were not even people. They were savages. And black man didn't know any better because he was learning new things, learning that new language, learning that new culture. And he was not allowed to read and write and think for himself because he was under the lash at least 16 and 18 hours a day. And when that poor man was not working, he was trying to get a few hours sleep so he can get up at 4 a.m., eat a few crumbs of bread, find something else to eat if he needed to, which he had to in many instances, and be at work about 5:30 or 6 a.m., in some cases before then.
Now, Doc, we've come a long way.
That's
You
right.
say Mississippi is the land of opportunity. I'm here in Mississippi, and I too believe that there are some things that we could do because there's so many of us in Mississippi that if we would all come together and rebel, as you say, not against the master, but rebel against the economic deprivation
That's right.
that's going on in our community, if we would stand up and fight even today,
That's right.
that we could change things in Mississippi easier
in
than
one
you could
generation.
change it in New York.
In one generation.
But we won't stand up. But I don't believe it's religion now that's holding us down, Doc. I think our children are not going to church the way that our generation went to church.
That's because of the parents. If you have a child in your house, he's 18 or younger, if you go to church, he should go. That's what my parents did. Your parents probably did the same. We go to church, whether you want to go or not. That's the way that they made us do it. You went to church.
But that's not happening today.
Not today. That's right. Now, I understand you had a big church, and I've been to your church.
Yeah.
But I see more adults there than I do young people. And I know most of them folks got sons and daughters 18 or under because many of them live with the grandparents. But they are not at the church. That's a little handful right there.
So if blacks are not being influenced by the reward of heaven to endure and turn the other cheek, if they're not being influenced by that, what are they being influenced by?
They being influenced by what I call the devil's business. Sex, drugs, laziness, taking the easy way out in education, not taking advantage of education and opportunities that are present for those that can't even afford it. For instance, we have 15 community colleges in Mississippi where you can go to school free. If you don't even have a high school diploma, you can get in those schools at 16, get a free GED. Many of these community colleges have 15 to 40 different vocational, academic, and technical trades where you can get certifications and credentials, and some of them in 6 months to 2 years. Job opportunities everywhere. And we won't take advantage of them because we don't know about them. Our churches not organized where they teach their young members about these kinds of things in school.
So our children are being influenced by the devil's what?
I call it the devil's business.
The devil's business.
That's right. That's gang banging, prostitution, self-hatred, having babies that they can't afford, the lack of family development. All of this encouraged by black people, including the church. The church don't break in and talk about anything that's going to develop the moral of the people. They're not in the moral development business in most cases.
We're going to go to a station break, and we're going to come back, and we're going to deal with this devil's business a little bit more. I think that I don't clearly understand that, and we're going to have to develop that. You're watching Socrates Garrett Live with my co-host, Dr. Eldridge Henderson. We're attempting to bring you information and honest dialogue about what's going on in the African American community. You won't find this kind of a discussion on at 6 o'clock news or anywhere else, quite frankly, not in the lecture halls, not in the legislature, not in the city council chambers. You won't find it in the public schools. And so it's important that you support this program. If you're watching us on Facebook, we want you to share this with all your friends and family and send stars to support the program. If you're watching us on YouTube, we want you to subscribe. It's critically important. If you're watching us on Roku TV, download our app and then watch us on Roku TV. Our app sits right there between Showtime and Netflix. One day we're going to be as large as they are if you will support us. Tremendously important that you do that. Now we're getting ready to go to a station break, and we will come back with our last segment of tonight's show. Stay tuned.
Advertise on WeBelieve.global, a brand new digital media platform. Share your brand with our audience on our many global live stream TV broadcasts and over the radio. For more info, visit WeBelieve.global or call 800-492-5186, option 1.
Are you dreaming of becoming an entrepreneur, but you're not sure where or how to start? At Entrepreneurs Academy 101, our online program will guide you step by step on how to start and grow your own business. We offer courses such as how to write a business plan, how to create a budget, and so much more. Our online training program is designed for you to learn at your own pace, and there's no set order to complete this program. Because our academy is online, you have the choice to learn with a group, with friends, or individually. Upon completion of the entire curriculum, you will receive a certificate of achievement to acknowledge that you have completed the training needed to become a successful entrepreneur. So enroll today to design the life that you love. Contact your entrepreneur coach, Brenda Myers, at 601 0695 or visit our website at www.entrepreneursacademy101.com for more information.
Welcome back to Socrates Garrett Live. We're broadcasting live from the deep, deep South in Jackson, Mississippi. You know, somebody said about Jesus, could anything good come out of Nazareth? And so we're wondering, can anything good come out of Jackson, Mississippi? Dr. Henderson, my co-host, thinks that this is the land of opportunity for black folk. And he's talked about, you know, some things that we must do in order to take advantage of that. It may be the land of opportunity, but he's going to have to explain, because we're getting poorer and poorer. We're losing our land. We don't own our homes. We have fewer and fewer businesses than ever before. So it's something sinister going on if this is the land of opportunity, and yet black folk are sliding backwards at a tremendous pace. Now, Doc, you brought up this term, the devil's business.
Right.
And we're going to get to our children, because the children are our future. We sing that all the time. You know, the children are our future. And we hope that the children will take us to places we weren't able to get ourselves. But you think that our children are more involved in the devil's business than we were in the church business.
Of course, because this is ingrained in the child, in those female heads that are running or managing 72 to 75% of the families in the black community. During your day and my day, and I've mentioned this many times, you had a black man in that family somewhere. There was some kind of father up in that household. Now, the same father that you had that produced you and your son now will allow his kids to practice family dysfunction. His 14, 15, 16-year-old child will get pregnant. He would let her stay there, let her drop out of school, or let her shack with her boyfriend in his house. Don't demand that they protect themselves. Allow gang banging to go on in the community and won't do anything about it. And they know who it is. It's always your son, your daughter, or your uncle, or your cousin. And I told you a few weeks ago, as soon as they kill each other, all the black person is going to do is have a flag and some balloons together, and they're going to pretend they're good Christians, and they moan and groan over the child, turn the balloon loose, and go on back and continue that family dysfunction. Continue that self-hatred. Continue the lack of getting the education and training and taking advantages of opportunities in the community. Continue to buy lottery tickets. Continue to refrain from attending church because they don't have any incentives to go anymore. Continue to feel good when they get hooked on drugs and so forth, because there's no way out as they see it.
As they see it.
That's right.
But underneath there's opportunity.
Excellent opportunity.
But we have to rebel.
Got to rebel. They have to do the following, sir. They have to deal with three entities in Mississippi, in the South, in the nation, in the world. They have to deal with the preachers or the religious leaders in the community, the elected and appointed officials, and the corporate leaders, and say, we are paying your salary, things are going to have to change, or we're going to run you out of business. Wow. And we're going to have to start changing on the local level where we are with what we have.
Let's talk about the local level, because we have come to a point now in Jackson, Mississippi, like in Baltimore, or like in Mobile, or like in other of these cities that have the Ferry Streets and the Buttermilk Bottoms and the black diaspora. And there's a tremendous pressure on that group of people, but it's all controlled and run by black folk now. And under black leadership, we're less successful, and we're seeing less opportunity that's coming from black leadership than we did under white leadership. Their contracts for goods and services are less than 10% under African American leadership, not under European leadership. It's less than 10% when black folk are in charge. Now, Charles Evans used to say, the brother of Medgar Evers used to say, when you're in charge, be in charge. But now our children are not demonstrating that they can deliver back to the community what the community requires and needs.
Well, that's a fact, and there's a reason for it. The black politician is doing just like he was trained when he had an opportunity to be that first black to be on the city council, or to be the mayor, or be the sheriff. Usually, when you have your first black politicians, or your first black in anything, they're going to get what I call a moderate or a liberal person that think and act and want to be like the people that's going to finance his campaign. Hell, a white man is not going to go and find a black person that's a radical and give him $200 or $300 to run for sheriff or school board, or even get on a commission or board agency for the state. They're not going to do it. So people get people that they can control, and they put them in office. And a good example, before the black people got in office in many of the cities, they had a quota for blacks to get contracts. White folks said, we'll give blacks 5%, which they didn't do. When the black folks got in office, and they might have been 90% of the population, they say, we're going to give blacks 5% of the contracts. And they don't do that either. So there's no change, because the same person that was not able to get in office when the blacks started voting, they found their blacks that they could train and support and court, and they then would do the same thing.
Now, Doc.
Yes, sir.
Then we got to take our community back. Is it going to take radical leadership? Is it going to take, people that are not under the control of their European master because of campaign donations, and because they want to be a member of the country club, and because they want to be loved? I mean, are we going to have to get rid of that group of people? But I don't know who you have to put in place if you remove that segment of the population. Who would we, in fact, have to put up to do the job?
Sir, there are thousands of them. To give you an example, there are a lot of black males and females that have integrity, education, training, leadership, ability. One could be a person named Socrates Garrett. I know hundreds of them. They are not interested in that kind of thing in politics, because they say, we want to work with the people that's in office. That is not the way to go. Folks like Socrates Garrett and a lot of others are going to have to sacrifice and get in office and just get in for one term, but at the same time train someone to take your place that's going to be trained in the church, in community organizations, foundations, and institutions. Your sons, your daughters, not the daughters and sons of the politicians that's presently elected.
And Doc, it's so evident in Jackson, Mississippi, we are struggling. We've had a tremendous water crisis. The world knows. Everybody has come to our rescue. We got more bottled water now than we ever had before. We got so much bottled water, we have reinstituted the recycling program, because we got these plastic bottles everywhere.
That's right.
And so Jackson is under the spotlight with failed leadership, with failed politicians that have not been able to maintain the infrastructures of the requirement of the city. And so Jackson now is under siege. It is, in fact, being taken over. by the state of Mississippi, who is now running our drinking water plant. And the governor says he doesn't know how long, or whenever Jackson will get the water plant back.
I can tell you when they get it back.
When will
they're going to get it back when the governor and his cohorts get their mayor that they want in office, when they get 5 council members that they want in office. That's when they're going to get it back.
How are they going to get that?
They're going to get that back by buying up downtown, moving in younger white groups and couples. They're going to make it more difficult to vote. They're going to make it more difficult for the people that live in the inner city and close to the downtown area, have a place to live, so they'll get further and further away. Then they're going to rezone and gerrymander those areas and lock them out of the area where they used to live. The price is going to be high for rent. The few businesses there are going to charge so much they're not going to be able to buy the resources there in those businesses. They're not going to allow the dollar stores there, the loan companies, and those places where you can go and get that cheap food. That's not going to be allowed in those new gerrymandered areas in these cities where they build those private schools. They might call them religious schools. They're going to exclude blacks because they can't do it economically. And then they're going to run their own candidates. But at first, they're going to keep a couple of blacks there on the city council that they have sabotaged. And that's why I always tell people, if you're real poor and you have no business experience, you don't have strong bodies and minds where you make decisions for yourself, your family, and your people, you shouldn't be allowed to be in a leadership position and at the same time allegedly represent black folks.
Wow.
That doesn't work.
It doesn't work. And so we have a situation here now where a black man has been recorded by the committee, the evaluation committee, to have had the best proposal at the best price for the city of Jackson. And this black man cannot get full votes from an African-American dominated city council to do this work. And so he's been working, and I want our viewers to hear this clearly because you're not going to believe this, but a black man has been picking up the trash in Jackson, Mississippi for 6 months without getting paid. Imagine that. He's been picking up the trash for 6 months in Jackson, Mississippi without getting paid. Doc, I don't know how African Americans sleep at night knowing that they are treating another African American that way.
It's very easy. That's that training that they received. See, a lot of these black people that are in these positions of responsibility are not responsible. They have that, what I call that white mentality, where they want to be like the oppressors. So they're going to whip that black man harder than the slave master.
Wow.
If they say we need a quota to give blacks justice, economic justice, it's not going to be as high as the white man will allege on paper. He's not going to do it either. But he'll say, I'm going to give you an opportunity to apply. And the black politician or the black leader or the black preacher won't even give you an opportunity to apply because he can't make that decision. The person that gave him money for his campaign, help him build that new church, going to have to be called and say, boss, these are the problems we have. These are the decisions we have. I have thought about this. What do you think about it, boss? No, you can't give that contract to this person. No, you shouldn't give a job to this person. I know a better person. I'm going to send them down to you. They don't even need to bring a resume. Well, the former governor, the former mayor of a certain city, the former board member of a certain agency told me to come down, Mr. Mayor, and interview for this job. You've already been told they're going to send you down. I've been in situations like that. So that person's automatically hired. Now, you're going to interview 2 or 3 more, but you're wasting their time and yours too. You know who you're going to get a job to. I have been in situations like that when I worked for the federal government.
Now, Doc, these conditions are not just isolated in Jackson.
No, they're not. All over the country. Matter of fact, all over the world, really.
All over the world.
Mm-hmm.
Black folk are acting the same.
That's right.
All over the world.
And we allow it to happen.
And we're allowing that to happen because we don't rebel.
That's right.
Because we are the sheep that just remain silent as we're being marched off to slaughter.
That's right. And when the wolf comes around, he watches and seek out the weakest one. And he goes in there and pick them off one at a time. He's not going to go to that strong one that's going to put up any resistance. He's going to let him be last. And then all the wolves going to gang bang on him. So therefore, you don't have but one left. You're compromised all the others. And
Wow.
now you're the king of the forest again.
Wow.
And those few that you didn't kill been whipped so they are wiping their wounds. And they just accept things as they are. Now, the reason I'm sounding funny, I've been to the doctor today and I've had some surgery, as you know. And that's why I'm sounding funny today and not talking properly.
Oh, you're talking
But-
just good. I mean, actually, your conversation this evening has been very enlightening.
But
Now, I can tell you this. We've come to one solution. I think you've come up to a couple solutions that we're going to have to implement. One is that we got to rebel.
got to rebel, got to. And not necessarily against white folks alone. We got to rebel against blacks and whites. Anyone that is putting you in a situation where their interest is superior to yours, you have to get those people out of power.
So we're going to rebel against those people, and one of the ways that we do rebel is by unelecting them,
That's right, that's one. And number two, boycotting them
boycotting.
by building your own institutions, your own resources. You don't go around and tell somebody, I'm going to boycott the nail place, the fingernail place, the convenience store. You just build you one. You're financing those places anyway, so you build your own convenience store. The churches can do it in 30, 60, or 90 days. You build your own banks. The churches have billions of dollars nationwide. In Jackson, Mississippi, they have enough money to build a brand new bank in 30 days through the state laws already set. And all they need to fill out a few papers, and they can do it. They have the leadership already working in the other banks. They can get those guys and ladies and have independence where they can build new subdivisions in 90 days because the qualified blacks that had the money in the bank, and all the blacks in Mississippi and Hinds County and Jackson are not poor folks. A lot of them have a lot of money in these banks. It's not invested properly, but they have it.
Well, they tell me that, Monday morning when all of the preachers, the black preachers across the country, head down to the banks to deposit all of the money that they have extracted from the parishioners, that Monday morning is the best day of the week for banks.
Well, that's why I go to the bank on Mondays. I like to see that happen, and I do see it. I saw a big old black preacher. He was a big one, too. The other week, he came in with a bag full of money, and he went to a special side, and one of the persons sitting in the back there, not a teller, took care of that boy. He was skinning and grinning, patting himself, talking the Bible, got his receipt, and left all that money up in there.
He arrived.
He got special attention.
He has arrived.
You know him well. I know him well. Everybody in Jackson knows him.
I tell you, he has arrived.
I guarantee
He's
you.
taking care of the business of the oppressor.
And I bet you couldn't find 5 members that's qualified to get a home loan in the area where the church is could get it from that same bank. They'll say, we don't invest in that area, boy.
Red line.
Exactly right. And that's,
Now, we're coming to the end of our program. I think we talked about some things that we're going to explore. We're going to talk about the devil's business a little bit more as we go along. We're going to talk about the devil's business versus the business of the church and the role that the church plays in this important thing. And we're going to talk about rebelling, which means to unelect people that are not delivering for you. And we're going to talk about how we boycott that. Interestingly enough, your theory of boycotting does not require you to say, don't go somewhere and shop.
of course not. That's wasting your time. All that's going to do is hurt you in the long run, because if you take the European man's money by boycotting his business, he's going to get you marginalized to the point where you're going to call the preachers in, the few black leaders that's acting as Uncle Toms, and say, well, I want y'all to come on in here, talk to me, I'm going to give y'all a job. And he's going to start you right at the bottom in the pecking order, as if it's a bank, as a teller, if it's a store, as a clerk. And it might even be real nice to you and make the black person that he hires head of the stock department in the basement.
We're about to run out of time. Matter of fact, we have run out of time. But as always, we want you to join us on Fridays at 5 p.m. It's Dr. Eldridge Henderson and myself. We're going to continue to talk about how do we move the needle when it comes to empowering and improving the quality of life for black folk. We're not going to take this laying down. We're not going to just sit back and watch others enjoy all of the largesse and have great qualities of life, live in the best houses, drive the best cars, their streets are smooth, and we're not going to just sit down and idly go by when we have our own economy that we're supposed to be in charge of. Now, we're not talking about boycotting or taking something from a European economy. We're talking about taking control over our economy. We're talking about rebelling against black folk that are not delivering for us. That is where we got to start. The war today is between the black elected official and the black business class. That's where this war is today. And somebody has got to prevail. And we know that the black business class is what we need, is who we need to prevail. So we're gonna talk about how we support that and how we make things happen like that. And how when an African American is the low bidder and has a contract that is $1.2 million a year savings, but can't get black folk to award the contract, we're going to rebel against that. We're going to rebel against that every time it shows up. No matter who it is, if the black person is your sister, your brother, your mama, or your daddy, we're going to rebel against that. Because that is crippling us. And we don't understand what it's doing to our children. They have less hope than we had in 1975. We're in terrible shape. Dr. Henderson says we are a member of the permanent underclass, and we're getting worse. Doc, any final shout-outs before we go?
Yes. All one has to do to change this, and they can start changing this situation that we've been analyzing with a prioritized corrective action plan in 30 to 60 to 90 days. If they would zero in on an agenda, a checklist, and decide that they're going to have a timeline and a manager to take care of each one of these situations, things will start changing overnight. Folks will get so happy. They'll be volunteering to work and make things better educationally, economically, politically, and socially in Mississippi, in the South, in the nation, and the world.
You heard it here. We look forward to you joining us again next week. Until then, you stay safe and have a great weekend. Good night. Good evening. I'm Socrates Garrett, and we're broadcasting live from right here in Jackson, Mississippi, the heart of the Deep South, right here in the African American owned broadcasting studio. We believe digital.com, our own platform. And so it's critically important that in the African American community, we control the narrative. I look forward to receiving opportunities to show and advertise your products for goods and services and to move your brand along in this community. We're broadcasting live on Facebook. When We Believe Digital Podcast, go to Roku and download our app, and We Believe Global, with shows like this to bring articulate, intelligent conversations and dialogue to our platform. So I'm here to continue sounding the alarm. This is how the South is going to rise again. Good evening. I'm Socrates Garrett, and we're broadcasting live from right here in Jackson, Mississippi, the heart of the Deep South, right here in the African-American-owned broadcasting studio. WeBelieveDigital.com, our own platform. And so it's critically important that in the African-American community, we control the narrative. I look forward to receiving opportunities to show and advertise your products for goods and services and to move your brand along in this community. We're broadcasting live on Facebook. When We Believe Digital Podcast, go to Roku and download our app, and We Believe Global, with shows like this to bring articulate, intelligent conversations and dialogue to our platform. So I'm here to continue sounding the alarm. This is how the South is going to rise again. Good evening, and welcome to Socrates Garrett Live. We're broadcasting live right here from Jackson, Mississippi, in the heart of the Deep South, where many of us believe that the South will rise again, but this time it's going to look a little different. This time it's going to have a different set of folk running things. We're going to have African Americans taking their rightful place, leadership roles in government, in education. We're going to have representation throughout the entire state of Mississippi. We're 40% of the population, some say 45. And we want to have congressmen and senators that are African American represent Mississippi. It's time for Mississippi to have a black governor. It's been too long. This has gone on far too long. We remain on the bottom far too long. Now it's time to do something drastic that give African Americans a chance to see what they can do at the helm. We need a black Secretary of State, a black Lieutenant Governor, a black governor, and a black Speaker of the House in Mississippi. Let us be the shining example on the hill of what diversity looks like and what equality means when it comes to America. Mississippi is the private project. It's the pivotal place to make change. Why? Because you start where the ground and the history has been the worst. That's where you start. You march into the belly of the beast and you make changes. Now, we're broadcasting live. You can find us on Facebook, on YouTube TV, on Roku TV, and on our very own website, WeBelieveDigital.com. We've been seen in over 139 countries throughout this entire world. We have guests and visitors and viewers from China, from Africa, and from all of the continental United States. And so we're waiting on you. Call us at 800-492-5186. If you're on Facebook, hit the share button with all your friends and families. Send stars to us to support us. If you're watching us on YouTube TV, hit the subscribe button. Help us monetize this channel. You know, it's time for black folk to have money and influence and power. It's time for us to move into mainstream and be an active part of the economy, where we have been deprived of that distinction since the beginning of time. Now, my guest, as always, is the Honorable Dr. Eldridge Henderson. He's a renowned author. He runs the Real News Talk Show. He has a training company, and he is one of the finest guest speakers that you will find anywhere in the world. If you need a speaker in your church, your home, or your school, I want you to contact Dr. Eldridge Henderson. Why? Because he is educated, but he's street smart. He's military trained. He understands the tactics of war. And so he and I were having a conversation just this evening, and I said to him, I said, Doc, I think we're going to lighten up this evening, because we were very hard last night on WMPR radio station, where we called to task our locally elected officials and members of the House of Representatives and members of the Senate, the Black Caucus, that voted to take money out of the public schools and push it over into private schools. And many of them say they didn't know what they were voting for. And so they were called out last night. And so I told Dr. Henderson, he and I both, they're going to hem us up one day. They're going to corner us one day, and we're going to have to fight our way out of it. He says he's ready for the fight. Dr. Henderson, are you ready for the fight?
Well, always. I've been ready for the fight for 78 years and have fought at least 68 of them just trying to survive, Mr. Garrett. It has not been easy. It's not going to get any better, but I'm getting stronger.
Well, Doc, I said to you, we're going to have to strap on like the old Mexican comrades and have the ammunition running across our chests, and we're going to have to make a stand.
Well, that is correct. We have to strap on with self-defense mechanisms like knowledge, wisdom, and then have the opportunity to talk to others and spread the same thing to them. But at the same time, we have to be prepared not to turn the other cheek unless we are reaching for another self-defense mechanism, and not let people just kill us on the spot, and all we do is fall down and pray and call on Mother, like a lot of black people have done throughout the history of the world.
Mama is the first word that comes to mind when you're in trouble.
That's exactly the way it is.
The weakest member of the family.
And the hardest working
And the hardest
member
working.
of the family.
But why didn't we call Daddy?
Daddy has not been around at least during the last 60 years in America for black folks. Most of them have not. Now the situation is getting worse. Every year you have about 1.1% of fewer and fewer fathers coming into marriage. Right now, if you read and do the research, you'll find that from 70 to 73% of black young people that are born in America today are fatherless.
Now, you have to have a father to get here, Doc. So what do you mean?
Well,
when you
it
say
means
fatherless?
clearly, so everybody will understand, that the father is absent. He is not married to his child's mother. And in most cases, these young mothers won't demand that they get married. And some tell me I don't demand it because I don't love this man, or I know he doesn't love me. And I try to tell them that has nothing to do with it. You have a child. Marry the person, get him in a position where he is responsible for that child, ensure that he signs that birth certificate. Then, if he wants to leave you and that child, put him up for support, child support, through the nearest state agency, and go on about your business.
Now, Doc, you said we got to fight, but you made a statement that just resonates with me and stays with me all of the time. And you say that slavery could have been ended in 50 years.
Or less.
Or
That's
less.
Right. That's right.
You said we could have ended slavery in less than 50 years.
We most certainly could. And let me tell you why. Now, when you first had the first blacks that came to America, we call it the colonists, were not slaves. They were indentured servants.
Whoa. What's the difference?
Well, an indentured servant is one that's here on a contract. That's the way most of the Europeans got here before they instituted slavery in America. They were indentured servants, usually the poorest males and few females that they could find in Europe. They were going to the ghettos, the poverty-stricken areas, the prisons, the mental institutions, and grabbing every misfit they could and put them on these ships, sent them to the colonists, and the elite, which was about 3 to 5% of the Europeans, worked those folks on those plantations in those colonies for a few years, 5 to 7, some books say 9 years, and when they got their time served, they gave them a weapon, usually a plow, and gave them an opportunity to own some land after they had the money to purchase a little spot. That's for the white folks. They had the American Indians as slaves, but they were not accustomed to that kind of continuous hard work. So many of the Indians died from sickness, disgust, disease, and then hundreds of them ran away. And they were able to go and blend in the interior with their friends, other tribes.
Well, I watch a lot of Western pictures about the Battle of Geronimo and so Cochise. There were some Indians that made a stand. They actually
Many of them
took the war on. They just lost.
That's right. They had 3 major Indian wars in America. I mean major, where they fought and lost. And they lost because they allowed the Europeans, the French, and the English to separate them and have them fighting with them against their own people, which was another tribe.
Wow.
Until they got them down to one group, and then they told those they had to get to stepping and get out of town and headed them on up to Oklahoma.
You know, the Indians probably would have won that contest had not it been for technology.
That's a fact.
The invention of the machine gun probably turned that war in a way that we can't even imagine.
It did. And the other thing that happened was the superior technology before the Gatling gun was invented. The American soldiers, of which we call the colonial soldiers, I better use that word right now, they had that long rifle. And they knew the Indians were nomads, most of them. Didn't have villages and governments that were permanent. They moved around with the seasons and followed the animals. So they said, we got to get these Indians in a position where we're going to have them moving out of this area or they're going to starve to death. So they went around and killed all the fur-bearing game they could and sold those skins, and eventually much of that went back to Europe and France and other places in Europe, and Spain, Portugal. And the Indians had less and less to eat. And that's when they start saying to themselves, we're going to have to take some of these opportunities and be stationary and let these colonists and the United States, they had a few states at that time, help us out. So then they start feeding them and giving them tricks.
In the projects.
Doggone right. Which they call the Indian reservations.
Right.
The ghetto for Native Americans.
Right.
Which was usually right around the camp that they had taken from the Indians.
And we have projects today.
We have them today. We're going to always
Why don't we call them reservations?
Well, they are reservations, but we don't want to repeat history because it sounds bad and it looks bad when you have concentration camps relocation camps, reservations. So the new word has been for a while, ghettos and inner city residents. That's the way to do education.
Okay.
They change the word from time to time, but all the time we know who they are talking about. The less of us. Basically, the poor black man and the poor dark colored man and the poor white folks. They're all in the same situation. All in the same situation.
We don't see anybody rebelling. We're more passive today than we were in 1965.
Well, that's by design. And the Democrats and Republicans are on the same team, and their role is to pacify poor folks and keep them happy. And they do it by two means. They look around among the black people, the Hispanics and the Indians. I call them the Native Americans. I'm not talking about the other Indians from Europe and Asia and other places. And they get 2 or 3 of those and designate those people as leaders and put them in non-decision-making responsibility or roles where they dictate to them and tell them when to make an appeal to black folks and to keep them calm. They pay those boys good salaries. Then they give them an opportunity to move in the suburbs. And if you're super black and super smart and have a distant white relative, they might allow you to move into the gated community, but just 1 or 2 of you. And then your job is to get out there and tell the European American or the elected politician or the corporate leader how to contain the other blacks that's getting ready to cause some kind of economic devastation in the community. And the first thing they tell them is, give them a little food, give them a little money, give them a few houses, and give them a little health care, but not enough to be significant where they could be independent.
And so blacks have infiltrated the black movement forever.
Forever.
We were talking about Malcolm X before the show started today. And he was a very powerful black man. But Doc, he was killed. Now, there are many folk that say that black folk killed him. What's your thoughts?
Well, that is partially correct. It is alleged that a black man did pull the trigger, but he was paid and told to do it by a certain police force that worked with the FBI, that worked with Hoover. You know, Edgar Hoover, he was the chief of the FBI, after they had declared that they were going to destroy all the significant black leaders in America, and especially Malcolm X and his group, the Black Panthers, and many others. And they had the black plants in there to infiltrate them, get into positions of leadership, and many of them were aides and bodyguards and secretaries for those people. They were set up their programs and take them to their speaking tours and so forth.
That's why the slogan is coined that you got to keep your friends close, but you got to keep your enemies even closer.
I guarantee you, that's the only way to survive.
The only way that you can be defeated is from inside.
Exactly, and that's the easiest way to do it, and they have always done that, even in biblical times. And if you know a little about the Bible, you know sometimes the man or woman would get into the kingdom, get into the temple, be close to the king. And they were there for a purpose. They were there to serve their people. And they made a lot of sacrifices, many of them. And then when you look at the end road, you find those people declare themselves for the Lord, and they help their own people survive famines and other things because they were there. And they would not accept those Tom roles that a lot of the so-called black people been accepting in America since, I would say, about 1660.
Well, things have changed. We now have black people that are manned in every station. When you drive into Jackson, Mississippi, we have a black government. We have a black mayor. We have 5 members out of 7 on the black city council. We got a black police chief. We got a black school superintendent. We got a black sheriff in the county. But yet things are not getting better.
They're not going to get any better. It is designed that way for it not to get any better politically, socially, economically. Because the people, and a lot of you all don't understand this, that can determine change in America, in Jackson, in the state of Mississippi, have 2 things that you don't have. They control the money, and they have the power and ability, and usually the legal mandate to sign the check. So when you control the money, you tell people who is going to get what, and you have the ability to sign the check. And you most certainly not going to help your enemy get into the position you're in. You want to keep him out at all costs.
We're going to come back right after this break, and we're going to talk about how we take our government back. I want to go back to how the Indians were able to survive without a government. Maybe we don't need a government. Maybe we need a king. I don't know. But we got to have something different than what we currently have. Now, you're watching Socrates Garrett live on WeBelieveDigital.com. You can call us at 800-492-5186, or you can check us out on YouTube. You can check us out on Facebook. You will be seen all over the world. We're getting ready to go to a station break and pay a few bills, and we're going to come back and continue this important dialogue with Dr. Henderson as we dive into what is wrong with the African American community. And then we're going to talk about what we got to do to correct it, and we must correct it. Stay tuned. We'll be right back.
Advertise on WeBelieve.global, a brand new digital media platform. Share your brand with our audience on our many global live stream TV broadcasts and over the radio. For more info, visit WeBelieve.global or call 800-492-5186, option 1.
Are you dreaming of becoming an entrepreneur, but you're not sure where or how to start? At Entrepreneurs Academy 101, our online program will guide you step by step on how to start and grow your own business. We offer courses such as how to write a business plan, how to create a budget, and so much more. Our online training program is designed for you to learn at your own pace, and there's no set order to complete this program. Because our academy is online, you have the choice to learn with a group, with friends, or individually. Upon completion of the entire curriculum, you will receive a certificate of achievement to acknowledge that you have completed the training needed to become a successful entrepreneur. So enroll today to design the life that you love. Contact your entrepreneur coach, Brenda Myers, at 601-672-0695 or visit our website at www.entrepreneursacademy101.com for more information.
Welcome back to Socrates Garrett Live. We're broadcasting live from Jackson, Mississippi, in the heart of the deep, deep South. You know, Mississippi is a marvelous state. It has all the capacity in the world to do good, to be a trendsetter, to move from the bottom to in the top 10. You know, folk are moving from the north and the west and the east now. Everybody's migrating south. And Mississippi should be the destination for most people. We have less than 3 million people in this state. Less than 3 million. You got twice that many people in Chicago. You know, you can't walk the streets in Chicago without bumping into someone. In Mississippi, you can go for weeks and don't see anybody. You know, we have a beautiful climate in Mississippi. It's 65 to 85 degrees during the wintertime. You know, we got beautiful lakes. We got plenty hunting. You know, we got everything that's required. So why are we last? Why is Mississippi last? What keeps Mississippi last? Now, if you're watching us on Facebook, we want you to share this video with your friends and family. Send us stars. If you're watching us on YouTube, we want you to subscribe. We need your support. Go to the website, hit our donate button, send cash, so that we can keep these programs running. You know, we have a complete lineup of shows on We Believe Digital, and we're expanding the program. You know, we're being seen all over the world. So call us at 800-492-5186 and book your time to have your own podcast show right here in our very own studio. You know, we're building out a complete entertainment media group. This consists of not only podcasts and broadcast studios, but we're going to have recording studios. We're going to have film production in there. We're going to have print media in there. We're going to have all of these venues to try and say that it's our job to move Mississippi up. Our European brothers have failed. They've had multiple times and lots of times and opportunities to move Mississippi forward, but they have not done so. We're on the bottom. And when you're on the bottom, you got to make some changes. If you're a football team franchise and you're always in last place, you got to make some changes. We're talking about the state of Mississippi. You got to make some changes, Mississippians. And we're pleading with Mississippians because this is home. This is where Dr. Henderson and I were both born. He was born on a plantation in the Delta, and I was born in the backwoods in Madison County. Fortunate enough, they built a highway. They came right by my house. But before they built the highway, we were way back in the woods. You had to pump sunlight in there. So we want Mississippi to do better. That's why we stay here. That's why we fight so hard for it. There's only one thing that's keeping Mississippi down and backwards. It's just one thing, and we all got to face it. It's just one thing that's keeping us down and last in everything. Dr. Henderson.
Yes, sir.
The one thing that's keeping Mississippi down, I believe many people know what it is, but very few are willing to say it.
One, it's very clear. One thing that's keeping us down is self-hatred, number one. And number two, we've been taught to love our enemies. And number three, we've been taught that you're supposed to turn the other cheek when your enemy is whipping up on you. And number four, we've been taught no matter what happens, you have to pray to the Lord and say to him, I'm going to endure until the end because I'm destined to go to heaven.
Now, Doc,
that is not going to happen.
That's a strategy for survival.
That's right.
But we're last. Now, I was listening to you last night, and many of us believe that institutional, systematic racism is the thing that keeps Mississippi last. I'm talking about not African Americans last, but Mississippians last. There's something that's holding white folk back in Mississippi, Doc. What do you say that the role that racism has played and is playing and will play?
Well, if you look at the history of Mr. Socrates, you have elitists that have always had the positions of power in any domain, any territory in the world, and it usually was 3 to 5%. And those people were what I call the rule makers. They control three things that you must control, and they had the ability to keep others from getting involved in those three areas of activity. One, they can control the elected and appointed positions. They control the purchasing power of the tax funds, and they had the ability to keep people out except those that they considered their friends and peers. And it was usually always what we called in the old history books the upper crust. And that included, usually in America, white males with property. This excluded their wives, their daughters, their mothers, the other white men and women that were in the society that didn't have property. And then when the white men started getting property in Mississippi, the South, and the nations, they then passed a law that said you had to have certain qualifications to get certain jobs. Education, training, certification, credentials. That excluded thousands and thousands of people. Then when people start getting education, now I'm not even to the blacks yet. They say in order to get a job in government and whatever and have these big power positions, you have to attend certain schools. Every state has their favorite and elite institutions. Mississippi, Ole Miss. Up there in Virginia, the University of Virginia. Harvard, Yale, Princeton, all of those. That's where the significant leaders in government and industry were always recruited from. So if you went to XYZ University, you didn't get a job to be a department head. If you were a law school graduate and you didn't attend a certain school like the University of Mississippi Law School, you were not going to get to be appointed a judge. On and on and on. And that has been the way that the people have always and in the nation as a whole. The top 3 to 5% determine the destiny of the other 95 or 97%.
Now, is that across the country or is that just Mississippi?
That's across the world, really. Because if you do the real research, you'll find that there are 100 families in the world that rules the world. 100 families. And their fingers and their influence is intertwined in all the aspects of human life: finance, education, media, government, international affairs. And their role is to buy and control or take everything that's significant all over the world. And if you do the research and find out who owns these companies that go into these countries throughout the world, kill the people, rape them for their resources, dominate them politically, and use their two major partners, the court system and the military, you'll find is the same people.
Well, I suspect we don't have any African Americans in that 100.
No, you don't. You most certainly don't.
So black folk are not the villains in the world, but why are they perceived and why are they so disrespected throughout the world?
Well, there's a reason for that. In order for you to look good, you got to find somebody to blame and put the bad news on them and let them be the one that's told by you that they are the villains, they are the savages, they are the uncultured, they are the uneducated. They don't know how to act. They don't know how to dress. They don't know how to speak. Their religion stinks. They do not have the ability to learn. They need supervision. We are the supervisors. We tell them what to do because they can't do for themselves. That's the way they are maintained. And then we believe that and don't do anything about it, but say, I hope my children don't have to bear the burden that I bear.
Hold your thought, Doc. We are running a little bit over here, and so it's time for us to go to a station break. We're broadcasting live right here in Jackson, Mississippi. You can reach us at 800-492-5186. We're going to be right back after these few commercials. Stay tuned.
Advertise on WeBelieve.global, a brand new digital media platform. Share your brand with our audience on our many global live stream TV broadcasts and over the radio. For more info, visit WeBelieve.global or call 800-492-5186, option 1.
Are you dreaming of becoming an entrepreneur, but you're not sure where or how to start? At Entrepreneurs Academy 101, our online program will guide you step by step on how to start and grow your own business. We offer courses such as how to write a business plan, how to create a budget, and so much more. Our online training program is designed for you to learn at your own pace, and there's no set order to complete this program. Because our academy is online, you have the choice to learn with a group, with friends, or individually. Upon completion of the entire curriculum, you will receive a certificate of achievement to acknowledge that you have completed the training needed to become a successful entrepreneur. So enroll today to design the life that you love. Contact your entrepreneur coach, Brenda Myers, at 601-672-0695 or visit our website at www.entrepreneursacademy101.com for more information.
Welcome back to Socrates Garrett Live. We're broadcasting live from right here in Jackson, Mississippi at the We Believe Digital Broadcast Studio. It's an African-American owned and operated studio. We've been seen all over the world. You can call and join us at 800-492-5186, or you can visit with us by chat at Facebook. You can also send us stars and share our video programs with your friends and family. On YouTube, we want you to subscribe to our channel. On Roku TV, we want you to download our app, and our app sits right there on Roku between Netflix and Showtime. You'll find We Believe Digital. And so you see we're making some inroads and some strides right here in the broadcast studio. Now, we talk about things that others dare not talk about. We tread on grounds that others fear to go. We much like Star Trek when I was a young man. You know, we're going into some places that others have not dared to go into. And so, but it's critically important if we're going to make changes. If we're going to make changes, we got to know exactly what the problem is, and then we got to offer up solutions. The change is that we have poor leadership, both black and white. It's not just black or just white. We have poor leadership, both black and white. Now, the evidence is very simple. We remain last in every major category for the last 50 years plus. Mississippi has been on the bottom. So, I mean, you can't argue with that. If you're on the bottom and you have a great state and you got a great place to live, and you're still on the bottom, then you got poor leadership. That's the European leadership that's been running the state for the last 200 years. African Americans have not been given an opportunity to participate in government in Mississippi. We have no elected statewide officers that are African American. Mississippi is a red state, and it gets redder and redder every day. And yet we are 40% of the population, but we don't have any representation in statewide offices. You know, no African American holds the position of the lieutenant governor, the speaker of the House, the governor, the treasurer, the district attorney, attorney general. None of those are African Americans in a state that's got 40% black population. So we have to say that our European brothers have to bear the brunt or why Mississippi is last. It's last under your leadership, under your guidance. You created this scenario. Now, to the African American leadership, we have some very sad news for African American leaders, where we have the majority population and we enjoy the support of the African American voters, where we control cities and counties and school boards and airport authorities in Hinds County alone. African Americans run the city of Jackson. It's got a black mayor, and 5 out of 7 members on the city council are black. We have a black school superintendent, and 90% of the school board members are black. We have an airport authority, and the chairman, and then 65, maybe 85% of the board members are black. We have a board of supervisors, 100% of the members are black. We have a sheriff department. All of the leadership inside of our sheriff department is black. And we remain poorer than any other group in a community that we control. There's over $1 billion that flows through the hands of African American leadership in Mississippi, in Hinds County alone, annually. And yet I see no black trucks running, no black business providing toilet paper and providing ballpoint pens, selling floor wax and hand sanitizers. I see no black businesses doing anything in the county where we are under control. Instead, I see the small amount of black business under attack, being told to get back. Don't you expect nothing? We don't want you to have nothing. And we're going to keep things the same way they were before we got elected. That's our reality. So under black leadership, we're last. Under white leadership, we're last. I don't know, Dr. Henderson, if we can't win with black folk and we can't win with white folk, I don't know what it is we can do.
Well, there is always a solution, Mr. Socrates, and that is one has to reinvent himself. One has to become renewed. One has to come up with a different philosophy and start where he is, with what he has, with his own leaders, and control at least 5 areas of activity from birth to death. And if people will do this, in 5 to 7 years, all those negatives that you just mentioned about politics and economic development and so forth will change. In 5 to 7 years, if the black people in America, wherever they're in a majority, control the education and training, religion, leadership, economic development, and politics in their areas where they're in a majority, and make their own rules, train their own people, and in 5 to 7 years, you will have new sheriffs, new superintendents of education, new members in the legislature, in the House and the Senate. You will have the numbers where they can select candidates to run on a statewide position, and they will have the votes to back it up, and people in a position where they can control the decision-making, where they determine who's going to get the money and who's going to spend it and who's going to sign off on it. If you have all the power where you make the money, you delegate the money, and you have the ability to sign off on it, you can always control. But you cannot continue to have the same black elected and appointed officials, the same black preachers, and the same black corporate leaders. They point on the 116 130 different boards and agencies they have on the state level. I saw some research from someone you know that with 130 some agencies in the state of Mississippi, they have about 7 or 8 black folks on there. And you find this is consistent throughout the South and throughout the nation. You can't find not one major agency in the state of Mississippi with 40% of the population black where a black man or woman is in charge significantly in a state agency as the head, where he or she can make the decision to sign off on who's going to receive the money. That always, when they have a black person as a co-chair or chairman of an agency on the regional or state level, he or she has no ability to sign the check. They have to make their proposals to a committee or board of directors, and they sign off on it. They are sort of like the advanced assistant in that organization with a big title.
Well, to your point, that none of these agencies are controlled by African Americans that have real power and influence, can really make any recommendations that the governor will adhere to. We've had some real serious issues in Mississippi with incompetence at the state level, where more than $96 million of TANF money has been stolen, have been fraudulently accessed, and a lot of people are being indicted. That kind of corruption comes from inept leadership, or is it something that is supposed to be that way?
Well, I'm going to tell you, historically, it has always been that way, and therefore it's supposed to be that way, because those people that are doing this have the mandate from the people that put them in office to do it, and they finance each other without fear. They don't fear the court system. They don't fear the federal courts. They don't fear the Supreme Court, because they control all of them. And if you look at the few people that are indicted, you find that they usually don't fear anything, because the district attorneys usually allow them to come in and make a little plea, turn them loose without spending one night in jail, detain them. They let them come in as a civil candidate, and they go and negotiate with them, don't make them pay the money back, and they give them a sentence, put them on probation, and let them serve the time at home. But if Socrates' cousin will go and steal $30,000, you're going to get 5 years, probably serve 18 months, have to pay back $60,000, and be on probation for 3 to 5 years. And you will find that if you look at the history of all the candidates, the corporate leaders and others that have stolen money from banks and governments, they very seldom went to jail. And if they did, even if the judge will give them 2 or 3 years, they'll serve a few months, and they're back. They don't make them pay that money back. They do corporate leaders the same way. The drug companies can kill 100,000 people and cause another 2 million to have cancer. It'll take 30 years for them to go through a court case, and those corporate leaders will say, I'll give you $400 billion, and I'm going to make a plea of no liability. And you just charge me and fine me. They give you the money, but they already made 10 times that much. And 2 or 3 of those top leaders are going to resign, and the board of directors is going to send them home with about $100 million, and they're usually going to move to Europe somewhere, to the Caribbean, and enjoy a wonderful time with their second and third wives.
And they take all of the funds that they have to pay, and they write it off as an expense and reduce the amount of taxes that they owe.
That's the way it's done.
That's the way it's done.
That's legal, too.
That's very legal.
Of course it's legal.
Now, tell me, how is it that the governor of Mississippi can decry that the mayor of Jackson is incompetent because of the way he handled the water crisis, and he's the same governor that's in place under the $96 million that was taken from TANF funds in the state of Mississippi. What gives you, if it were me as governor, I would not say that anyone was incompetent at this time, based upon the precarious position that I find myself in.
Well, that's very clear, Mr. Socrates. Now, when you are listening to the signals, which one are you going to hear? You're going to hear the one that's beat the loudest. That's the drum you're going to hear. So if I'm guilty about anything, I'm going to find someone to put it on and say he's more guilty than I am. He is stupid. He is not intelligent. He is a poor leader. He can't make good decisions because I control the decisions he makes, because I'm not going to give him what he needs to make a good decision. If he asks me for some money, I'm going to demand that he send me a proposal. If he sends me a proposal that's 100% correct, I'm going to demand then that I'm going to put an amendment on it where I'm going to have to put a commission together to tell him how to spend his money that I give him. And I'm going to make sure I'm not going to give him enough to solve the problem, even though I would look good. I don't want to do this because my base is going to put me in a position where I'm being what we call a black lover. You know what word that they use. And then I won't get another position. I can't even get a position to run for the next level of government. I will not get a position to be the president of the local university. I will not be able to be an ambassador to a nation in the world.
Well, let me just tell you how serious this is. You know, we have a situation right now where the governor of the state of Mississippi has sent out a request for a proposal for a firm to operate and manage the drinking water plant. We have our mayor who has sent out a separate RAFP for a proposal for someone to manage and operate the drinking water plant right here in Jackson, Mississippi. Now that is about as foolish a scenario as you can ever imagine. That almost topples the fact that you got African-American members of the city council that won't support a black man for a garbage collection contract. We have the examples of the worst leadership anywhere in the country. And that's why we're last. And that's why we can't move forward, because our leadership is so failed and corrupt. Now, how do you have two elected officials, one for state governor and one the mayor, putting out two separate requests for proposals?
Well, the reality is that really the mayor doesn't have a choice. He knows he's not going to get the money he needs from the state to fix the infrastructure, the water system and the pipes and all that kind of stuff that runs from the water plant to the individual homes in the city. He knows he's not going to get enough money to do it. And the governor is smart enough to say that now you are not a good leader because you won't come to me and give me the information I need to give you $200 or $300 million and let me tell you how to spend it. The mayor is strong. The mayor of Jackson is a lawyer. He's very smart. And he knows that. He said, this man going to help me, tell me what to do with the money. He is going to look good. And he definitely not going to give me enough to solve the problem. And I have political ambitions too. Just that simple.
It's just that simple. And so the citizens are just caught in a mercenary position. We don't rebel. We're like sheep. We just are marching on to the shredding stop just before we're chopped up as lamb chop.
That's exactly the way we operate.
We just don't seem to have the ability to rise up.
See, the sheep will get together when the wolf or the fox will come out and grab one that's on the fringes. They will pool together. I call putting their resources together, get in a tight knit. But black folks don't do that in America. They don't do that in Asia and Africa.
What do they do?
They go and find out and tell the white man, you need to put me in charge. I can straighten this thing out, but you got to give me some funds to do it. You got to make me the vice president. You got to make me the president. You got to give me enough money where I can be a corporate leader. And I'll do what you want, boss. And the fox then is already in the hen house. And when you drop a fox in the hen house, Mr. Socrates, that stirs up the chickens. They are running and hollering and squalling, laying eggs when they're not even supposed to lay eggs, and they're disorganized and confused. They don't know what to do, and they can't get out of the coop. And that fox is eating, biting one in the butt, biting another one in the leg, biting another one in the neck, and he's laughing and getting fat, and the chickens running around there having heart attacks and faint from stress and anxiety. Instead of all of them saying, look at here, it's 150 of us and one fox. The ones that's the strongest can turn around and attack the fox. And just five more get on him and peck him to death and eat the fox. But we don't do that.
Well, I don't know why.
I know why, but I don't want to tell you why, because it is so realistic and so simple. I just don't want to say it at this time. This is what I share in our speeches when I move around here and there, when I'm talking to corporate leaders, politicians, community organizations, churches, and youth groups, and so forth. We have a simple plan, which we call the Prioritized Corrective Action Plan, that has an agenda, a checklist, a timeline, a manager, and a 3-member evaluation team that you can assign to those 5 areas of activity that I mentioned, education and training and so forth. And you can start seeing significant changes in 30, 60, or 90 days anywhere in the world. Anywhere in the world.
You can teach the chickens how to defend themselves?
That's right.
Dr. Henderson, it's always good chatting with you. We are broadcasting live right here from Jackson, Mississippi. You know, we have some jovial conversations from time to time, and, you know, we gave the example then of how the chickens are just being, they're nervous and having heart attacks and things of that nature and disorganized when the fox is in the hen house. Well, down here in Mississippi, we have foxes, multiple foxes that are in the hen house. And black folk are just scattered all about. They don't say anything and they don't do anything. They don't even complain anymore. We have become immune to our position. You know, poverty is the norm. We accept it with a badge of honor that I'm poorer than you are, not doing good today. We don't speak prosperity in existence. We're afraid to. We're afraid that if we do, we'll be attacked by other blacks, that they will turn on you. The old crab in the barrel syndrome. So we got a real mess down here in Mississippi, and we need some help. So we want to appeal to our viewers out there all across the world. If you're a CEO of a major corporation, invest in Mississippi. Come to Jackson, Mississippi. Put your plant here. You know, we got tremendous labor pool here. We don't have the skilled labor because we're not being trained. But we have population in large numbers. And we need jobs. And we need the work. If you're African American and you're retiring and you have run water plants and public works departments, then move to Mississippi. Come help make a difference. Let's make a change. If you're in India, and the most engineers that I see these days are coming out of India. If you're in India and you want to come to Mississippi, get with someone to try and get you a visa and come over to Mississippi and help out. We got to change this thing. You know, America is browning, and it scares a lot of people. The browning of America is inevitable. One man, one vote won't be tolerated much longer. You can expect major changes in our government on the rules of voting coming up very shortly. You will be denied the opportunity to hold office. In some way, the Europeans are going to increase their numbers. Now, how are they going to increase their numbers? Well, they got to change these crazy policies. What policies are those? We got the policy that when a white man fathers a child with a black woman, that child is black. And he's an African. If you got one drop of African blood in you, you're black. Now, what sense does that make? Dr. Henderson, I wanted to close, but I can't.
Okay. Go ahead, sir.
What is going to happen when the population in Mississippi becomes 60% black?
It's going to be
And what about this theory of one drop of black blood means you're black?
Well, that was designed on purpose to keep the black population from increasing to the point where they will outnumber the whites during the slavery period. The white man has always said, I will do whatever, I'm talking about the male now, I will do whatever is necessary to become the dominant person in this city, in this county, in this state, in this nation. So if I have a child by a black person, that child is black. If I have a child by the grandchild of that black person that my daddy got pregnant 30 years ago, that child basically looks 99% white, but he or she is black. I can't marry that person. They are not going to be my social equal. If I know they are black, they're not going to get the education and training at the dominant universities and high schools and colleges. They are not going to be trained to get certification as a plumber, welder, or whatever. They are not going to be able to enroll in the banking institute to become a banker because they're going to have to be referred by me to get in there, even if they are so white that I don't know it. But if I just think they are by their zip code or what I just imagine by looking at them, or what I have heard, they're going to be excluded. But when they start getting to the point where they can't do that anymore, and I've read this, the white European going to create more white people on papers through the census report. What are you? European American, black, Latino, mixed race. So they're going to find out a way to make all the Asians, Chinese, Arabs, what I called yesterday the white Hispanics, white. All those people are going to be characterized as white. You're not going to have Asians anymore and Arabs in America in the next 20 or 30 years. They're going to be legislated white.
You heard it here on We Believe Digital. We're running out of time. But join us next week as we unpack and walk through what's happening in America and what the impact of the browning of America and what policies and challenges and changes are we going to see in the next 10, 20 years. One man, one vote. Remember that. But that's good if you're in the majority. One man, one vote for a minority doesn't work very well. Something has to change. Dr. Henderson has just outlined what he believes is a possible change that's on its way. Come back and visit with us again, same time next week, as we talk about these things and we try to find a way to bring blacks and whites together to work to make a better state and a better city and a better community where we all can rise and enjoy the American dream. I want you to stay safe out there. Have a great weekend. And until next week, good night. Good evening. I'm Socrates Garrett, and we're broadcasting live from right here in Jackson, Mississippi, the heart of the Deep South, right here in the African-American-owned broadcasting studio. We believe digital.com, our own platform. And so it's critically important that in the African-American community, we control the narrative. I look forward to receiving opportunities to show and advertise your products for goods and services and to move your brand along in this community. We're broadcasting live on Facebook. On We Believe Digital Podcast, go to Roku and download our app, and We Believe Global, with shows like this to bring articulate, intelligent conversations and dialogue to our platform. So I'm here to continue sounding the alarm. This is how the South is going to rise again.